Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this session, we'll inshallah go ahead from where we left off last time. Last time हमने ये chapter 5 हम पढ़ रहे थे. इसका जो टाइटल है वो दी अटैक. तो ये जो टीम थी पाकिस्तान इस्लामिक मेडिकल एसोसिएशंस वाली, तो ये बड़ी मुश्किल से अफगानिस्तान पहुँचे थे. वहाँ जब ये पहुँचे तो वहाँ पर सबसे पहले ये डॉक्टर खालिद एक डेंटिस्ट था जो कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स से वहाँ पर आकर काम कर रहा था पहले से. तो उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा मैंने तफसील लिखी है क्योंकि उसके पास बहुत नॉलेज भी थी और वो काफ़ी अरसे से वहाँ उसको एक्सपीरियंस भी हो गया था. Now when this they heaved a sigh of relief on reaching Afghanistan and were handed over a dispensary to manage and run near the border on the Afghanistan side. This they did and raced towards Kabul to set up and start the treatment centers there as time was running out. To their surprise, they found all markets and commercial centers open with throngs of people going about their business in all cities and towns along the way up to Kabul. On reaching Kabul, they first went to see Dr. Khalid, a dentist from the United States, who had come down from there to help manage and run medical facilities in and around Kabul. He was the head of an organization called Global Medical Association, which was funding his trip and providing medical supplies. He took the team to see the ultra-modern setup of Al Jazeera television on the premises of Kabul Intercontinental Hotel, which impressed everyone. अब डॉक्टर खालिद के पास जो नॉलेज जो क्योंकि उसको तजर्बा भी था और नॉलेज भी थी, तो उसने बताया, अकॉर्डिंग टू डॉक्टर खालिद, there were 6 working hospitals in Kabul at the time. The 400-bed military hospital was the only one that was fully functioning. Wazir Akbar Khan Hospital was barely managing. Another hospital was being administered by ICRC. The other 3 hospitals were in a very bad state. Out of these, one had been handed over to a team from Qatar to rehabilitate and run. And one was under Dr. Khalid's management and he was busy restoring it to make it functional. That left one hospital for the PIMA team to operate and run, if they could. It was the 70-bed Ibn Sina Chest Hospital in a dilapidated state. The PIMA team decided to transform it into a trauma center as there was none in Kabul at that time. Its location was also ideal for an emergency center, for it was surrounded by hills on 3 sides, not an easy target for an attack from the air. With this in mind, the team members went to see the Taliban Minister for Health, Maulvi Sayyid Asmatullah Asim. He approved all their plans and they undertook to pay 1 year advance salaries to all the staff of the hospital. The PIMA team planned to make this a model hospital for Afghanistan with all the latest equipment, specialist doctors from Pakistan, and most important of all, a clean and hygienic environment for both doctors and patients. Dr. Khalid offered to provide ambulances and to pay for civil works required to make this place look like a hospital. This offer was gratefully accepted. Lastly, this PIMA team met a senior doctor in charge of epidemic control and contagious diseases. They brought up the topic of women's education, hoping that some of the graduates could later qualify as doctors to work in Afghanistan. The senior doctor told them that the Taliban had wanted to set up adequate and enough facilities for women's education. They all wished to have their women folk treated by Afghan women doctors, but they did not have the funds. It was a dream under the prevailing conditions when the monthly salary of the most senior doctor in Afghanistan was only 12,000 rupees. That's about $200 per month. The fact-finding trip by this PIMA team was a success, but all came to futility in the end. Because the Taliban left Kabul that very same day, and the city fell into the hands of the invading foreign forces. तो ये इन्होंने जो एफर्ट की थी पर उसका फ़ायदा ना हुआ, क्योंकि वो तालिबान जो थे उसके बाद यानी ये आखिरी दिन था और उसके नेक्स्ट डे जो थे वो दे लेफ्ट काबुल। आगे थोड़ा सा एक जर्नलिस्ट की टीम थी जो कि कंधार के एरिया में गई थी, तो उनके बारे में थोड़ा सा तफसील है जो कि बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है। On the month, 1 month into the war, on 1 November 2001, on the invitation of Taliban, a delegation of 23 journalists comprising of teams from BBC, CNN, AP, AFP, ABC, Reuters, NNI, and a few others from Pakistan visited Kandahar to assess the situation firsthand. Judging from the report filed by Chief Editor Mr. Tahir Khan of NNI on his return from Kabul, this was published in Jihad-e-Kashmir on 30th of November 2001, the fortnightly magazine. This must have been an eye-opening experience for them as for most visitors. Traveling to Quetta, entering from Chaman into Afghanistan via Spin Baldak, they were surprised to find that the large bazaar in Spin Baldak was still partially open for business at midnight. On their way to Kandahar, headlights of all manners of vehicles were on full beam, trucks were plying as usual on the dirt road, blowing up huge dust clouds. They reached Kandahar at about 3 a.m. and were welcomed by Taliban authorities. All were put up in the guest house run by the Foreign Office in Kandahar. They had hardly settled in when they heard a loud explosion. Some of them rushed outside with cameras looking to photograph the incident, but none could make anything out in the dark. Then they heard jets thundering overhead and more explosions before the azan of Fajr, the call for early morning prayer. In the morning, Mr. Agha, the political secretary of Mullah Omar, came and took the delegation with him to see the bombed places. These were a dispensary and 2 houses. The dispensary had a large red crescent sign emblazoned on its roof. It housed about 50 patients at the time of the bombing, which occurred at exactly 4:30 a.m. 11 patients were killed and a doctor was injured. 2 doctors and 4 nurses lived on its premises at the time. It was a large house, previously residence of the Consul General of Pakistan in Kandahar, where myself and my team, we stayed for months before the facilities in the floor mill were set up. The surgeon in charge of the dispensary, Dr. Ubaidullah, told the delegates that a large number of outpatients visited the dispensary every day before the bombing. The other 2 houses severely damaged next to the dispensary were owned by a Dubai-based Afghan businessman, quite advanced in age. He had come to Kandahar to settle down and restart his old business, but now he was forced to abandon his plans because of this bombing. 2 of his brothers were killed during the Russian campaign. Now he too was ready to die for his country. These Americans, he concluded, were more cowardly than the Russians. They sneaked out at night to bomb the cities like thieves. On the next day, the delegation was taken to visit a place called Chokar Kares, 80 kilometers from Kandahar. It was a greener area where people migrated from the city to avoid the indiscriminate bombing raids. Yet at least 10 families living close together were slaughtered in a devastating attack. A 22-year-old man broke his silence. 19 of his family were killed in the bombing. All of them were working at the natural spring in the small land of a few acres which he owned. Out of the 19, 9 were women and 3 children. He also showed the delegation a number of 4 feet long unexploded bombs which were lying by the roadside. Pictures of these bombs were published in some newspapers worldwide. Nearby there was a graveyard. 18 graves were freshly made. In each were buried 3 or 5 persons. It was impossible to sort out and bury them singly because all the dead were in bits and pieces. The next stop was Mir Waiz Hospital, the main hospital of Kandahar, according to the head of the hospital, Dr. Bakhtur Rahman Zakri. the delegation met before touring its wards and corridors, there was a severe shortage of life-saving drugs, surgical instruments, and blood supplies for seriously ill patients. When most injured people were too afraid, even when most injured people were too afraid to come to the doctor because hospitals were being targeted from the air, more than 100 patients died at two of the hospitals in Herat and Kandahar recently in air raids. Patients whose treatments were beyond the hospital's means were sent to Quetta in Pakistan if they could make it. In one ward, a young boy named Falak Naz, in his late teens, was under treatment for severe wounds sustained in the raid on the Red Crescent dispensary earlier, जो पहले हमने जिसके बारे में भी बात की थी. Once a mechanic's assistant in an auto workshop in the city center, now he was lying in intense pain, unable to move or speak. His uncle, who was looking after him, told the team that the boy's younger sister was killed in the same raid. Some delegation members went on to visit the women's ward. An old patient there was Sultan Bibi, a 60-year-old woman who was seriously injured. She was going to the market to buy groceries with her two daughters when suddenly bombs fell from the sky, leveled the market, killing both her daughters. The woman attending to her was a neighbor, told the team that she had no relatives left and was now absolutely alone. During a lengthy meeting with the governor of Kandahar, Mullah Hassan, they discussed the pros and cons of the war. Mullah Hassan emphasized that it was a war the Taliban never wanted, but now that it had been imposed on them, the invaders would certainly be defeated eventually. They would never be able to achieve their aims. In another meeting with Wakil Ahmed Mutawakkil, the foreign minister of Afghanistan, when the delegation questioned him about the news in the Western press regarding his differences with Mullah Omar, he vehemently denied those reports. In their discussion with the people far and wide in and around Kandahar, the delegation members were impressed by an all-encompassing solidarity expressed by the people for the Taliban government. When the delegates mentioned the talk in the press about a national government without the Taliban, the Afghans laughed. The Taliban, they said, were very much an integral part of the political landscape of Afghanistan. They could not be ignored. इसके बाद ये डेलीगेशन जो मेंबर्स थे, इनको हर किस्म की फ्रीडम थी, जहाँ भी चाहते जा सकते थे और कोई इनको रोक टोक नहीं थी. The delegation members were amazed by that they were allowed to meet anybody and go anywhere they liked without any restrictions. It was remarkable under the circumstances. On Friday, normally a holiday when shops could be closed, they found most shops open with people busy shopping. They were even more dazed when the locals gathered around them and started praising the Taliban and denigrating the invading forces. The ex-Taliban regime in Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11 attacks at any stage of the operation. Some Arabs, including Osama bin Laden, provided financial assistance to the Taliban and came to their rescue out of compassion. Bin Laden, we were told by the Afghan officials in a conversation before the attack, was busy in the rehabilitation of widows and orphans. He had nothing to do with weapons and fighting anymore. Pakistani intelligence agencies also help out as a matter of policy, thus creating enduring ties with the leadership. What the regime had achieved was in many ways similar to an atmosphere of incorruptible poverty that prevailed during the reign of second Caliph Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, which is mentioned by Rogerson in his book published 2007 on the second page of his book. Reports in the press about capital punishments for petty crimes and cutting off of hands for theft and so on are simply contradictory to what we witnessed. Although we saw some such punishments being carried out, those were reserved for habitual and repeat offenders, psychopaths, and only when their crime was proven beyond any shadow of doubt. Courts strictly adhered to the due process of law in such trials. They were quite independent and were respected by the ordinary citizens. Only a couple of capital punishments were carried out in the 6 years of the Taliban rule. This eradicated all major crime completely and brought about a crime